So our session today, the last of intense couple of days, is on structuring the financing of hydrogen valleys. But valleys, as we all know, are a cornerstone of Europe's hydrogen strategy, and their success depends on, amongst other things, on one critical factor, which is the ability to structure and to secure and structure financing effectively. The Commission, at least on our side, we have been instrumental in making this happening. I mean, through, first of all, the Clean Hydrogen JUs funding. We have funded more than 20 hydrogen valleys, laying the foundation for regional, let's say, literally on-the-ground hydrogen economies. But also programs like the Innovation Fund, InvestEU, Connecting Europe Facility are blending public and private capital to share risks and then unlock larger investments. At the same time, the Commission, we have tried to actively shaping a clear and predictable supportive policy framework. Just to mention the last two key elements, REPowerEU plan is setting ambitious production and import targets, and the new, well, not so new anymore actually, Hydrogen Bank is designed really to support offtake agreements and stabilize pricing, which is crucial to create investor confidence. But again, these tools, so on financing and policy side, are not really working in isolation, but we really try to make them work together to form what we can call an investment ecosystem that will enable first mover projects to reach scale and commercial maturity. Again, as I was just saying, the valleys are not just pilots, at least not in our mind. They are supposed to be scalable and replicable models that can then serve as an anchor to industrial decarbonization, competitiveness, and ultimately regional growth. So our leadership in financing and the risk in these projects is accelerating Europe's position as a global frontrunner in renewable hydrogen. I mean, one could argue that maybe the US had done a bit more than us, but with the new administration, things have changed, as we can see. So what we can offer is really stability in this regard. So our goal today is to explore various financing models and funding mechanisms to bring renewable hydrogen projects to final investment decision and ultimately realization. So to start, I would like to invite on the floor Mr. Aleksander Gerbec, Managing Director at ECUBES, that will actually introduce us on a small project is running, so to see us how the North Adriatic Hydrogen Valley project is functioning.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk about structuring the financing of hydrogen valleys, and particularly on the action in our region, how and why we started. I have 10 minutes, so I can talk only about the last 10 years, right? And I have another question. Is in the room any banker, maybe? Not so far? Okay. We'll come later. So the challenge in our region started in 2019 when the group of industrial partners, predominantly from hard-to-abate sector, went together and discussed how to decarbonize their industry. It was foreseen that this can only happen if, it was clear that this can only happen if hydrogen can become affordable. After several discussions we have with stakeholders, also in Brussels, it was identified approach that if we would organize a project, the kind of hydrogen valley, we might create a competitive proposal, because the challenge was how to create a momentum that would take off action. And in 2021, we got endorsement from the government with a suggestion, with proposal and ambition to develop entire hydrogen supply chain, production, storage and transportation, with a focus, of course, on offtake, and also to explore how hydrogen can be imported to the region. This project was awarded then in 23. as a horizon through the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, which is consisting of 37 partners, 17 projects for production, storage, and use of hydrogen in multi-sectoral approach, including with options for the hydrogen import. And for today's presentation, I basically initially prepared only one slide, but then I got some suggestions. Since we have 10 minutes, that would be maybe worth it to give some deeper insight. So the project, as it was proposed, was expected co-funding for 25 million from Clean Hydrogen Partnership. 3 countries pledged together 200 million, and this pledge is still there. It's not on the account yet. However, the things are moving in a very interesting direction. And of course, with this proposal, we were very happy. So on this picture, you can see many happy men, ladies, celebrating beginning of the project. This was in May 23, when we were gathering together on our 3rd conference, which we are organizing every year to bring together stakeholders from the region to accelerate this hydrogen ecosystem development. On this slide, you can see the roadmap we are working on. On the left side, it's a first grant that we won from North Adriatic Hydrogen Valley. And you see on the right side, it's a so-called North Adriatic Hydrogen Valley 2.0. So this is the vision, this is the direction where we move, and all the rest is just the milestones. So as it says here, North Adriatic Hydrogen Valley, we started with preparation in 2019. After we successfully prepared defense-related projects, which was approved by the European Defense Agency in May 19. Before we won the call, we understood that, of course, very small part of these pilot projects can be co-funded. So we were already at that time exploring what kind of mechanism we can also mobilize in case we will win. But of course, we said, even if we don't win, this project will be then like a second chance. However, we saw that we need to engage also investors together. And in this context was created so-called North Adriatic Clean Hydrogen Investment Platform, where we are now with 12 partners working on additional 5 projects, and partially it's also co-funding some previously awarded projects. And of course, this was not enough, because we saw that not just with investors that we need to have a deeper collaboration with the municipalities, with the cities. And in this context also we made let's say, a very positive partnership with selected cities from the region of 3 countries, actually 2 countries and 1 region, autonomous region, Friuli Venezia Giulia. There were some other calls that we applied, and our work has become interested so that some other partners were interested that we would work together. So we are now involved with Hydrogen Valley between Slovakia and Ukraine. We are now, we have applied with another call with Hydrogen Valley between Austria, Slovakia and Hungary. So far we are now active in 8 countries, actually 10 countries, 157 partners, and predominantly it's focused on the downstream projects, where we have today a portfolio of 15 projects under preparation. The drive for this action is the project that we are working now on, where we can have a capacity of approximately 100,000 tons of hydrogen available in 2029. We have signed agreement on upstream side already in April. We have now in the negotiation for midstream part, but our leverage is downstream. So together with partners, we are now working to materialize this project. So in this context, we we feel pretty much comfortable that projects which are under North Adriatic Hydrogen Valley, they have very, very strong drive that's going to happen. That's why I said if there is a banker in the room, this is the momentum that we are now acting. So I raise this question because for the banking sector, it's clear there are so many interdependencies and it's so many risks, so they cannot come to the table. So in this context, we also prepared a kind of private equity fund, investment fund, that we can discuss with potential partners who would be interested to join. We are discussing these things also with the partners from other hydrogen valleys, and this is how we see that we can scale Hydrogen Valley, that we can realize it, but then that we can really scale and that we come to the point that hydrogen will be available. Let's say the same picture with some other perspective. We have this blue line, which is Action Before 23, and then call NAHV, which is enabling, which is funding the 3 machines which we are scaling up innovation, which was developed through North Adriatic Hydrogen Valley. We have first intercontinental hydrogen supply on 26, and by 28, 29, we're going to have this 100,000 ton. It is important that all this work so far, before Clean Hydrogen Partnership awarded, was 100% from our perspective at our company funded by private money. So far, we spent approximately 5 millions in the last 10 years. We are working 13 years in this section. And now we are here. So then we got this NAHV and NASCA grant, which is another 2.6 millions. And now for this large infrastructure project, we are just announcing this information that we are looking for support from European institutions to materialize this project. Leverage of the buyer goes through the partners who are working together with us on large capacities of seasonal storage. We are talking about new, innovative hydrogen carrier, very competitive one, which enables to create also seasonal storage, which enables affordable green energy on demand. And in 28, we expect to have a price, we're going to have a price 5 euros per kilo of hydrogen. For the future, there are, of course, some other prospects, but our focus is now to come to the point that this project of 100,000 tons is going to happen. So, in our development, there were many times the people said it's impossible. At the end, it was done. And then became just normal reality. Nobody was taking very much. So now we can have option. It's not, this is not our choice, it's an option we have together. Either to act, either to run, or either to work. So we are offering to the partners 2 very simple things. Whoever is interested either on the offtake side, the companies who are interested to have affordable hydrogen, we can offer, we can sign contract. We can offer to investors to step into the super joint venture. We are creating now this company as a super joint venture between upstream and downstream and midstream partners. And this partnership is open, we can discuss whoever is interested, and this is how we see that we can realize the hydrogen economy. So this was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aleksander. I would like now to invite on stage also the remaining speakers. We have Heidi, Tuiskula here, Timo, Bollerhey as well. Nicolas Brahy, if I'm not mistaken, is joining us online. It's the other way around, good. Timo is online, Nicolas is here. Thank you. Very good. So maybe starting some Q&As with us on stage, starting maybe with Heidi, this is the funding manager at Norwegian Hydrogen and working on the CONVEY Hydrogen Valley project. Starting with you, I was saying, in 2024 you were awarded a €9 million grant from the Clean Hydrogen JU for the CONVEY Hydrogen Valley. Could you maybe share some insights with us on how this public funding helped unlocking the realization of your Hydrogen Valley, and how is the share of public and private funding in your project?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for having me here today. Obviously, receiving such a precious grant is, I would say, it unlocks the building of the community, because it obviously helps when you talk to people with your idea of starting to produce green hydrogen in a port in northern Denmark, when you can say that if you want to work with us, you can actually get part of your costs reimbursed. So that's a great benefit out of it. It also has, I would say, value as a precious grant when it comes to talking with investors, talking with other funding agencies. So it has value more than, I would say, the money, because obviously, as has been said many times, that money is not covering, it's covering a fraction. It's probably in our case, depending on where we draw the line of what is the scope of investments that we actually consider be part of CONVEY, it's somewhere between, I would say, 20 to 40% of the whole funding. And how we decided as a green hydrogen producer is that we will structure the funding so that entities who we need to be part of the game as supporting us will maybe benefit from it a bit more. And we, as an organization who is going to make the biggest investments, have probably, well, less than 20% of the total cost of ours. So it was just, for us, it made sense to support the parties that we actually needed there.
Good. So it seems quite, also in your case, quite a complex financial architecture to manage. And so I wanted to ask you, what are then the major financial hurdles that you had to face in the early stage of your project, especially again when it comes to recombine or combine together EU, national and regional fundings, or what are your recommendations in this case?
It is complex. I think it has been said in this room during these 2 days a few times. The rules of different funding instruments differ, their timelines differ, their requirements or limitations differ. What has been our experience is that every time we, let's say, receive something precious, which is always a great thing for us, but then you go into grant agreement negotiation and you feel a bit, I don't know, scrutinized, or like, oh, you already have a grant, so I'm not sure if we can give it. So it's a lot of work to figure out which grants work together. I think it is a specific field of expertise that is definitely needed, but it is also doable. We are not yet there fully, but we have managed, for example, maybe if I take a success case for us, in a form that in the CONVEY project we are building, as part of the Hydrogen Valley grant, we're building one refueling station for heavy-duty vehicles. Obviously, we understand that when it comes to the logistics operator who is part of the consortium, it's quite difficult for them to change their fleet to run with hydrogen if there is one station available. So then we went to the CEF Transport Fund, and we got additional funding to build a corridor from northern Finland through Denmark. So that was sort of a successful case of combining two different European grants. And that worked quite nicely, and they complement each other very well. Some other things that we are looking is that during the project's first, let's say, year, we've learned more of how this is going to actually look, and we need some additional parties and additional developments, especially since our valley is focusing not only delivering the value of hydrogen, but also delivering the value of oxygen and heat. So we're looking at some Danish grants for the heat use case, because we need to include district heating operator and some other parties who are not yet in the consortium. So it's an ongoing process. I don't think it takes time to fix it, but it's definitely doable. Maybe some things, as has been said a few times here, is to try to make it, I don't know, easier, but at least to define the rules clearly, because sometimes I feel that it takes a lot of time to actually figure out, and then, like, we are a green hydrogen producer which operates in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, well, across the Nordics. So it is a lot of rules to clarify, and then if there could be some kind of, I don't know, simplification maybe in those, that would help.
Thank you. Let's turn now to Timo. Timo, you're CEO at Hintco and participating also in a big project on Hydrogen Global. What I'd like to ask you is, how can innovative approaches to create hydrogen markets in Germany, in your case, can address demand uncertainty and incentivize private investment in production of green hydrogen?
Yeah, very much happy to answer that question. The core idea is that we want to be as market-based as possible. So what we try to achieve with the ESG Global mechanism is simulating an existing market on the supply as well as on the demand side. So that projects are not actually asking for grants or for subsidies, but they can really compete in a market where a producer will see a bankable off-taker that is at the other side of the table, that is willing and able to pay the price that is required to cover the costs of the production and allow a decent return, provide long-term cash flow predictability by entering and locking in long-term offtake agreements. And with that, we try really to create that investment certainty that is required for projects to go from MOUs to real FID and start producing molecules. A little bit the same on the demand side, where we simulate that there is a producer, a seller of a green molecule that is selling at a price that the market is able and willing to pay at this point in time. So this is exactly why we do so, like a double simulation through the double auction mechanism of the ESG Global approach to create that investment certainty that we require now.
You mentioned the double auction mechanism that you're running, and again, what role do they play in creating a first wave, at least, of viable green hydrogen production projects?
But the role here is really that with the intermediary, we call it the Hintco, the hydrogen intermediary company, which is acting as a trader, which buys and sells hydrogen. We're buying with long-term offtake agreements. That is exactly what I said. This sort of the missing thing out there for the producers to have that long-term cash flow predictability. And we're selling it with short-term contracts into the European, into the German markets. And with that trader in the middle, and a very unusual trader, because the aim is that we really see ESG Global and Hintco as an instrument that will get out of the markets once supply and demand come together without any such kind of a support. And this is how we try to get the first molecules and the first projects really taking FID. And then beyond that, very important when we talk about market creation, everybody always talks about market ramp up. We say we need to create that market first, that then ramps up in the next phase. But to create that market, we require liquidity and price transparency. And this is what we try to achieve with the ESG Global approach beyond the physical molecules that will be being produced under the contracts that Hintco signs. There will always be a limitation to that. So another very important aspect of the ESG Global model is the support of a market creation by providing that liquidity and very important, the price transparency, because that is what is in the long run needed to create a market and also to mobilize institutional capital at scale, because we all depend on institutional capital to be mobilized, because the market cannot live and depend on subsidies in the medium to long term. This should only be used in the beginning to create this market, to make this market work, and then it should work by itself, and the institutional capital should really flow in at scale.
Thank you. That's indeed the point. Now, out of your experience in the hydrogen market, in which sectors do you anticipate the highest interest when it comes to demand-side auctions?
It's a very good question. Since we haven't conducted the demand-side auctions yet, it's interesting for us to see as well. Obviously, there are some sectors also driven by the regulatory requirements, like transport sector, and others might have the highest willingness to pay at this point in time. On the other side, we see lots of demand already on the chemical side, on the fertilizer industry. It will be very interesting to see also how hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives like ammonia will be attracted to also be cracked into hydrogen, where we will see most likely also utilization of hydrogen or its derivatives beyond the current use that we see there. But we assume in the beginning it will be maybe the transport sector, it will be the chemical sector that will have the strongest and highest demand in the first run.
And maybe a last question to you before passing on to the other speakers. What are the key learnings on your side, I mean on the supply side, auctioning activities so far?
A few key learnings. First of all, we extended, I think, the first auction 6 times for ammonia. This was not because it took so long to get the auction done, but it was for the bidders, for the producers to really place a binding bid, because they're not bidding here or asking for a grant or for a subsidy. We're signing a really firm offtake agreement, which is fully fledged, negotiated. So we realized that the projects are in a much less advanced stage than maybe the market anticipated 2-3 years ago. Also, now we just conducted what we call the roadshow, where we were engaging with potential bidders for the new auction of ESG Global of Hintco. And we also there seen that over 90% of the projects worldwide have not taken or FEED yet. They're in rather early stages or late stages of a feasibility study, or in a very early stage of the FEED. So this really showcases that there is a lot of interest, a lot of momentum, but really to get to the commitment, you need really light at the end of the tunnel. You need a real offtake scenario with Hintco ESG Global coming in to really take these steps. And this is where we got to be realistic also when we look at the timeframes that we've seen here. Things take longer, and this is also based on the ground that sort of the scenario is still missing, that there is a real investment case to take these important next steps, because we got to be very clear for projects to take FEED, depending on the size of the project. We're talking about anything between like 5 to 45 million of investment capex that is needed here. And this is why it's so important that we have also different instruments. I think earlier we talked about also, some other participant talked about equity that needs to come in. We need different instruments that enable this industry to really function, and that the different elements really come together.
Thank you, Timo. Now, moving on to Nicolas Brahy, General Counsel, Public Affairs and ESG Director at Hi24. Which project fundamentals are of key importance for Hi24 as a private investor when it comes to commit and invest into green hydrogen projects?
Okay. Maybe if you allow, before answering the question, I would like to explain a bit where we are coming from and where we are in this discussion. So I think last year we saw an absolute record of deployment of renewables. I think, if my memory is correct, 600 gigawatt of solar PV and half of that of wind in the world. This is due for plenty of reasons. One of the reasons is that every single person in this room has some money in a pension fund or some money in an insurance company where you pay a premium, and each of them invest in hydrogen and solar, in solar and wind. So solar and wind deployment is one of the reasons of their capacity to deploy such a quantities is that there is all this financial capital available to deploy them. So the reason why we create I-24 is to say that at some moment this needs to happen for hydrogen. We need to have everybody have a bit of hydrogen in its pension. But in order to do that, the idea is that you need to demonstrate to these people that it's safe to put part of your pension money into a project of hydrogen and that it will deliver enough return so that you get your pension paid. And actually, it's quite a lot return that you need to have your pension paid. So that puts people in a very demanding situation in terms of return from project. Now, if I can show the next slide. Just one slide. So this is, again, to try to explain where we are coming from. So we are an investment fund. We managed to raise 2 billion euro, half of it coming from industrials, and the other half coming from these financial investors, the pension fund and the insurance company. We have made a number of investments here. You see the investment in Europe and the infra fund. I'm not talking about outside of Europe or tech investments. We have done 4 developers which are developing projects, because when we start to invest, there was not yet project ready to build, but we invest in developers that are building projects, and you see there are roughly 16 or 20 projects made by these in most of European countries, but we have a big focus on Spain, France, Germany, and the Nordics. And soon other countries will come, plus an investment in H2 Green Steel. So H2 Green Steel, or Stegra today, it's an integrated project that does 700 megawatt of hydrogen production, and then green iron and green steel. That will be the biggest electrolyzer of Europe when it's built, and it's in construction now. And then 2 investments in mobility, one in Germany, H2 Mobility, and one in Paris, Hintco, which is an ecosystem of mobility. So that I mean, I don't present this to advertise what we do, simply to understand, to tell you where we are coming from or what we do. Now, if you can show the next slide, just 1 second, and I finish this. Sorry for the presentation. This is because you asked me which projects are the most likely to move forward, not to move forward. And I have, sorry to say, because sometimes people believe that financial people are smarter, that they have smart idea to solve fundamental problems. They don't. They don't. They have good ideas to allocate risk between the shareholders, between the suppliers and the off-takers, but in the end, they are not smarter people. The fundamentals remain the same. And the fundamentals are policies. And you can see there, it's classified by sector. You have on top, you have steel, and then you go down, you have refineries and aviation fuel and maritime fuels, and then you go further down, which is ammonia and fertilizers. And you see what is missing yet in the regulatory framework, because part of this is to be implemented, and the level of risk. And you can see what is green is easier to invest, what is yellow, it's feasible, what is red is very complicated. Despite the fact that there are regulations saying that we should decarbonize green hydrogen to industry, I can tell you that if nothing changes, that will not happen at all. Because the people, the state don't dare to transpose the red. So now we are trying to find other mechanisms like green lead to try to find another mechanism to make it acceptable by end customers. But okay, no, I can try to answer some financial question, but I just want to be honest. And at first, I thought to decline coming here simply because I'm not sure that I have some smart financial trick to share. So I'm always back to policies, and I know Tudor is fed up to hear people complaining about policies, but I'm sorry to say it's a bit the bread and butter of the sector.
Well, let's say that being in Brussels, you have a unique opportunity to raise these points, so take the opportunity. It's always welcome. But I understand that you don't work only in Europe, but that you pursue investments also globally. So how do you see the European market compared to other regions in the world when it comes to renewable hydrogen at the moment?
But what makes a project work is, I try to simplify, but probably a combination of regulations, subsidies, and the specifics of the project. And actually, so in terms of specifics of the project, you can have, for example, if I take Stigra, which is the production of green steel, they have one part which is the specifics of the project is that they are in a place where you have cheap baseload electricity. Next to it, you have you have iron ore available. And then you have a very smart team that has designed a project very well and that was very good to negotiate with banks and off-takers. Plus the policies that help, but it's not the easiest policy because it's ETS, which is not the most generous policy, but they play with it smartly. I have in mind another project which is in South America. The main driver is baseload electricity at 30 euro per megawatt hour. It's the basics. When you find that, and then of course you need to find some off-takers in the area that I'm going to do. Then you have the policy side that helps. We have one policy that should work fairly well in Europe, is RED II transport target for refineries. It's quite narrow, it's dead boring because putting green hydrogen in refineries is not very exciting, but it's clearly where it has the most potential to work in practice. That's where most of the project that will reach FIDs this year or next year will be, it's in refineries. Still, you require a member state to finalize the transposition of RED, which is supposed to be finalized last month, but it's not done at all for many member states, and to play it correctly. And so some member states are very good, some are very bad. And we have, Germany is doing a very good job. I can talk about one member state where we was supposed to be very good and projects are stopped. Subsidies will be given back to the member state because the transposition is badly done. And this is immediate consequence. Project is done and the developer is in a very badly shape because of that bad transposition. So that's very concrete, real. Then the subsidies, you have some good subsidies and some very poor subsidies or unfortunately poor subsidies. So the beauty of the US and the IRA is that you know what you need to do and then you get your subsidies. Okay, no, they have Trump, I realize, but at least you know what you do and you get your subsidies. In Europe, think about the H2 bank. For one guy that wins, there are 20 guys that develop a project that pay fortunes in consultant in developing projects, and they lose. They have not won anything. So what's a huge waste of energy? Second, I will not comment, but the budget is so small compared to what the project you have, is that you end up paying 70 cents per kilo of hydrogen. Nobody is going to take an FID for 70 cents. Nobody. So the subsidy is not triggering the subsidy. The project is waiting for the transposition of RED and taking the subsidy as a sweetener for the off-taker. But it's not triggering. Reversely, you have some subsidies that do trigger. For example, the UK is giving a very generous CFD and sometimes it's a bit too generous. So I mean, we have a project in mind, and I wonder whether we can really rely that the government will stick to its commitment of the subsidies. And I quote, a colleague told me, from all historical record, the UK has never cancelled a subsidy. So you can believe into it. But okay, that's a subsidy, which is in that case, just to answer, this is driven by the subsidy alone, is not the regulation which is the real trigger and the subsidy helping. Well, I can discuss endlessly, but I don't want to monopolize the floor. Sorry.
No, it's good, but it seems there's still some work to do also for my colleagues in member states in terms of doing a good transposition of the key regulations. I'd like now to maybe go back to Aleksander for another exchange with you. I think this one works better, so I'll pass you mine. When you presented your project, I mean, it seems, and it is actually quite complex, as we said, 3 different member states, impressive number of participants. So could you maybe elaborate a bit on the process that you have undergone to secure public and private funding for these valley in that very complex setup?
So when it comes to this complexity, we are lucky that we are from the region where people historically were not migrating so much, but borders they were. So when you create a collaboration, it's about people, and when we sit together, we were discussing about the companies which were just occasionally across the border, and this is how the collaboration was always there. However, it was important to identify motivation because we understood that this kind of project can only happen if there is one main, let's say, strong, like a backbone project, but most predominantly that there is a real interest, even though there is no solution, but interest needs to be there, and this is how we started. And that's why, let's say, this communication is, let's say, driven by motivation to find a solution. Of course, as in any hydrogen valley, many challenges, but we try not to talk too much about the challenges. We just fix them and try to find a solution through the small steps. What I would like to emphasize is that this is an important project, but we are doing micro steps. So this mitigation of interdependencies needs to be very carefully articulated if you want to have argumentation when you discuss with the partners. And of course, this is very difficult also to communicate. So that's why we need time. We need, let's say, capacity of people that we are working together, and this is how also we had this idea to apply to the call 1, to the call 2, engage with other people, identify leaders or people who are keen to work in this direction, because it's a question of time when hydrogen will be affordable. What means affordable, of course, is another question. If this affordability will be defined by the price of natural gas is one thing. If this will change is another thing. It's up to the society to decide that hydrogen is exactly what is natural gas. So we believe that it's not the case. So that's why we work together, but also with the partners from other regions, because our region has also one disadvantage, that the cost of electricity, first of all, it's very industrialized, but also the cost of electricity is far too expensive that production of hydrogen could be competitive. So that's why we are working not to de-industrialize region, but to decarbonize region. So we're working to identify solutions that we can bring hydrogen there, and also in the context not just to create inflow, but that we create solutions where seasonal storage will be simultaneously developed, and if seasonal storage is, let's say, competitive, affordable, it creates a business model for investment into the renewables. So we are going into direction of self-sufficient in the energy context. So in a way, we can talk, it's complex, but we are working together, people I think we understand more or less very well where we want to go. And from this perspective, it's not so stressful.
Thank you, Aleksander. Maybe one more question to you. You mentioned also in your presentation, or briefly touch upon, that your project is actually in an ecosystem of other grants and projects that are in a way supporting it. When you have received a grant also for the North Adriatic Clean Hydrogen Investment Platform. There are the NASCA that you mentioned. Could you maybe explain how these grants are accelerating investments in the area, and what's your experience when it comes to really design the financial strategy behind combining the different sources of these grants?
So let's say we are not coming from the world of consultancy. We came with the concept that we would develop infrastructure that would allow affordable green energy. We understood that we need to win the Hydrogen Valley call at the time, but then we were exploring what kind of action we need to develop. And I must say that we had pretty strong support from new partners also who came across with suggesting, let's say, additional mechanisms to support development. And in a way, it's pretty practical. So when we see a call, we just adopt our project to that call, because clean hydrogen basically fits everywhere. So and that's why we made 4 applications, we won 4 times. So this is the way how we do.
Not bad. That's quite a good track record. I think we still have five minutes before the end of our section, and I want maybe to open the floor to the public in case you have one question you'd like to also ask to our speakers and panelists. I don't see any hand raised. Otherwise, I might have one myself. Thank you.
Use your mic. I have one question. Usually it's the moderator who asks it. So Davide, if you allow me, what will you recommend, or what will you not do again in order to find the best way to finance your project? Usually we say, what would you have done differently? I'm very interested to know what you should definitely not do again. For all of you.
So if I would do now, it means that I have all learning that I got it over those years. I would just come together with my partners here, explain how much we need, and we would require this money to realize this infrastructure. I think that it's more than ever clear that we need this infrastructure. I think that's, in a way, it's unfair from the engineers. Let's say, I'm not talking, we understand how banks, they need to operate, they have rules from central banks and so on, but it's basically the energy transition shall be basically, it's a obligation of the society, and if we need to raise funds to build this infrastructure, we shall just do it. This is this is how this is what I would write to Santa Claus.
Okay, maybe I can go next. What I would not do is not spend enough time in designing the project. I think that's the key thing, and we probably, and now you who actually stayed this long are going to hear a secret. We were very late in sort of deciding that we want to apply from the Valley Call, and then we made the application, and we apparently still managed to create something which made sense because we got funded. But I think what I would maybe recommend people to do is to spend some time on structuring your project, because you need to understand that the Hydrogen Valley funding will not cover all of your funding needs. So you should focus already when you are thinking of applying how you're going to cover and how you're going to combine them, because now that you have already, let's say, a grant agreement in force, it is a bit more difficult to figure out the rest, because you probably have not designed your project in a way that it allows simple way to do fundings. And then maybe if I can just quickly say on general on hydrogen project, just focus on developing them into a bankable project. So it just sort of, everyone has said the word offtake, but that's very crucial part to have in place, and obviously there's been a lot of discussions on the price of hydrogen versus price of fossil fuels, and in that I would probably have more of a political statement that we should try together in Europe, probably globally, but at least here we are European people together trying to bring the hydrogen and the green hydrogen into reality. We need to de-incentivize the fossil fuels and get that that money into the offtake. And I'm not even thinking that it should go to those who produce hydrogen. I think it should go to those who are going to use it, because they need also a lot of investments. And we see when we talk to our potential customers that they are struggling with it. Thank you.
It depends whose mistake you want to talk about. If it's mine, I see many, in fact, but it's probably unavoidable, because if you don't want to make mistake, you just don't move. So I think we had a number of youth mistake. Some of them, we may pay them a lot, but and of course it would have been better to wait 3 more years before investing only in the mature project, not in the developers, not in the early project. Wait for the regulations to be really there and not to believe that regulation would come. But if you do that, you just wait and see. So probably we should not regret that we rush a bit in making some investment, and let's rather struggle to make them work. And that's what we are trying to do. And it's tough, but if it was not tough, we would not like it. So I think that's what we have in common here, is that we like when it's complicated. So.
Timo, would you like to come in as well?
Yeah, maybe I really liked also the comment that Nicolas just made. I think in Europe, sometimes I have the feeling that we really try to avoid making any mistakes, and before we do a mistake, we do nothing. So we really need more of an approach like, you know, what has been just discussed. We also need to get all of us a little bit out of our comfort zones, the banks, the producers, the off-takers, the regulators, the certifying bodies. This is a new and nascent market. There are risks, there are uncertainties. This is not a swing-in market that we can deal with as usual. I think we all need to leave our comfort zone to a certain extent, and also one of the lessons learned, which was also raised here, bring every stakeholder into the picture as soon as possible in the process. Bring your banks on board. Bring your investment committees on board as soon as possible, because this is not business as usual. You need to bring them along on the journey right from the beginning to make this work, because otherwise you will lose a lot of time towards the end of the, for example, what we've seen in the auctioning process, that if you don't have your stakeholders on board right from the beginning, you lose a lot of time at the end. So this is where we really encourage all bidders in the future to bring also the banks and the other stakeholders on board.
So I would add to all these words also one, let's say, not just my observation, but something that everybody is aware. Change from natural gas to hydrogen requires big challenge at the off-taker side. For this, you need people, you need the best people in the company who can do that. It takes time, so they need to have support from the management. All these companies, they have complex decision-making processes. It takes time. So it would be very, very helpful if somebody would start to focus on off-take side, on support off-taking side, because once this starts going to move, as we heard many, many times, the hydrogen economy will have open doors. Then it's only a question of hydrogen that's going to be competitive. Thank you.
Yeah, and on these notes that I subscribe, I would like to now end our session and give the floor now to Bollerhey for her final concluding remarks of these 2 days on hydrogen valleys.